Chapter 18 Revelation at Yazuac. Although they had managed to partially refill the water skins during the storm, they drank the last of their water that morning. "I hope we're going in the right direction," said Eragon, crunching up the empty water bag, "because we'll be in trouble if we don't reach Yazuac today." Brom did not seem disturbed. "I've travelled this way before. Yazuac will be in sight before dusk." Eragon laughed doubtfully. "Perhaps you see something I don't. How can you know that when everything looks exactly the same for leagues around? Because I am guided not by the land, but by the stars and sun. They will not lead us astray. Come, let us be off. It is foolish to conjure up woe where none exists. Yazuac will be there." His words proved true. Saphira spotted the village first, but it was not until later in the day that the rest of them saw it as a dark bump on the horizon. Yazuac was still very far away. It was only visible because of the plain's uniform flatness. As they rode closer, a dark winding line appeared on either side of the town and disappeared into the distance. "The Nenor River," said Brom, pointing at it. Eragon pulled Caddock to a stop. "Saphira will be seen if she stays with us much longer. Should she hide while we go into Yazuac?" Brom scratched his chin and looked at the town. "See that bend in the river? Have her wait there. It's far enough from Yazuac so no one should find her, but close enough that she won't be left behind. We'll go through the town, get what we need, and then meet her." "I don't like it," she said, when Eragon had explained the plan. "This is irritating, having to hide all the time like a criminal. You know what would happen if we were revealed." She grumbled, but gave in and flew away low to the ground. They kept a swift pace in anticipation of the food and drink they would soon enjoy. As they approached the small houses, they could see smoke from a dozen chimneys, but there was no one in the streets. An abnormal silence enveloped the village. By unspoken consent, they stopped before the first house. Eragon abruptly said, "There aren't any dogs barking." "No." "Doesn't mean anything, though." "No." Eragon paused. "Someone should have seen us by now." "Yes." "Then why hasn't anyone come out?" Brom squinted at the sun. "Could be afraid." "Could be," said Eragon. He was quiet for a moment. "And if it's a trap, the Yazuac might be waiting for us. We need provisions and water. There's the Nenor. Still need provisions." "True." Eragon looked around. "So we go in?" Brom flicked his ears. "Yes, but not like fools. This is the main entrance to Yazuac. If there's an ambush, it'll be along here. No one will expect us to arrive from a different direction." "Around to the side, then?" asked Eragon. Brom nodded and pulled out his sword, resting the bare blade across his saddle. Eragon strung his bow and nocked an arrow. They trotted quietly around the town and entered it cautiously. The streets were empty, except for a small fox that darted away as they came near. The houses were dark and foreboding, with shattered windows. Many of the doors swung on broken hinges. The horses rolled their eyes nervously. Eragon's palm tingled, but he resisted the urge to scratch it. As they rode into the centre of town, he gripped his bow tighter, blanching. "Gods above," he whispered. A mountain of bodies rose above them, the corpses stiff and grimacing. Their clothes were soaked with blood, and the churned ground was stained with it. Slaughtered men lay over women they had tried to protect. Mothers still clasped their children, and lovers who had tried to shield each other rested in death's cold embrace. Black arrows stuck out of them all. Neither young nor old had been spared, but worst of all was the barbed spear that rose out of the peak of the pile, impaling the white body of a baby. Tears blurred Eragon's vision, and he tried to look away, but the dead faces held his attention. He stared at their open eyes and wondered how life could have left them so easily. What does our existence mean when it can end like this? A wave of hopelessness overwhelmed him. A crow dipped out of the sky like a black shadow and perched on the spear. It cocked its head and greedily scrutinized the infant's corpse. "Oh, no, you don't," snarled Eragon as he pulled back the bowstring and released it with a twang. With a puff of feathers, the crow fell over backward, the arrow protruding from its chest. Eragon fit another arrow to the string, but nausea rose from his stomach and he threw up over Caddock's side. Brom patted him on the back. When Eragon was done, Brom asked gently, "Do you want to wait for me outside Yazuac?" "No." "I'll stay," said Eragon shakily, wiping his mouth. He avoided looking at the gruesome sight before them. Who could have done? He could not force out the words. Brom bowed his head. "Those who love the pain and suffering of others. They wear many faces and go by many disguises, but there is only one name for them. Evil. There is no understanding it. All we can do is pity and honour the victims." He dismounted Snowfire and walked around, inspecting the trampled ground carefully. "The Yazuac passed this way," he said, slowly. "But this wasn't their doing. This is Urgle work. The spear is of their make. A company of them came through here, perhaps as many as 100. It's odd. I know of only a few instances when they have gathered in such." He knelt and examined a footprint intently. With a curse, he ran back to Snowfire and leapt onto him. Ride! He hissed tightly, spurring Snowfire forward. There are still Urgles here! Eragon jammed his heels into Caddock. The horse jumped forward and raced after Snowfire. They dashed past the houses and were almost on the edge of Yazuac when Eragon's palm tingled again. He saw a flicker of movement to his right, then a giant fist smashed him out of the saddle. He flew back over Caddock and crashed into a wall, holding onto his bow only by instinct. Gasping and stunned, he staggered upright, hugging his side. An Urgle stood over him, face set in a gross leer. The monster was tall, thick, and broader than a doorway, with grey skin and yellow piggish eyes. Muscles bulged on his arms and chest, which was covered by a too small breastplate. An iron cap rested over the pair of ram's horns curling from his temples, and a rounded shield was bound to one arm. His powerful hand held a short, wicked sword. Behind him, Eragon saw Brom rein in Snowfire and start back, only to be stopped by the appearance of a second Urgle, this one with an axe. "Run, you fool!" Brom cried to Eragon, cleaving at his enemy. The Urgle in front of Eragon roared and swung his sword up mightily. Eragon jerked back with a startled yelp as the weapon whistled past his cheek. He spun around and fled towards the centre of Yazuac, heart pounding wildly. The Urgle pursued him, heavy boots thudding. Eragon sent a desperate cry for help to Saphira, then forced himself to go even faster. The Urgle rapidly gained ground despite Eragon's efforts. Large fangs separated in a soundless bellow. With the Urgle almost upon him, Eragon strung an arrow, spun to a stop, took aim, and released. The Urgle snapped up his arm and caught the quivering bolt on his shield. The monster collided with Eragon before he could shoot again, and they fell to the ground in a confused tangle. Eragon sprang to his feet and rushed back to Brom, who was trading fierce blows with his opponent from Snowfire's back. "Where are the rest of the Urgles?" wondered Eragon frantically. "Are these two the only ones in Yazuac?" There was a loud smack and Snowfire reared, whinnying. Brom doubled over in his saddle, blood streaming down his arm. The Urgle beside him howled in triumph and raised his axe for the death blow. A deafening scream tore out of Eragon as he charged the Urgle, head first. The Urgle paused in astonishment, then faced him contemptuously, swinging his axe. Eragon ducked under the two-handed blow and clawed the Urgle's side, leaving bloody furrows. The Urgle's face twisted with rage. He slashed again, but missed as Eragon dived to the side and scrambled down an alley. Eragon concentrated on leading the Urgles away from Brom. He slipped into a narrow passageway between two houses, saw it was a dead end, and slid to a stop. He tried to back out, but the Urgles had already blocked the entrance. They advanced, cursing him in their gravelly voices. Eragon swung his head from side to side, searching for a way out, but there was none. As he faced the Urgles, images flashed in his mind, dead villagers piled around the spear and an innocent baby who would never grow to adulthood. At the thought of their fate, a burning fiery power gathered from every part of his body. It was more than a desire for justice, it was his entire being rebelling against the fact of death, that he would cease to exist. The power grew stronger and stronger, until he felt ready to burst from the contained force. He stood tall and straight, all fear gone. He raised his bow smoothly. The Urgles laughed and lifted their shields. Eragon sighted down the shaft as he had done hundreds of times, and aligned the arrowhead with his target. The energy inside him burned at an unbearable level. He had to release it, or it would consume him. A word suddenly leapt unbidden to his lips. He shot, yelling, "Brisinga!" The arrow hissed through the air, glowing with a crackling blue light. It struck the lead Urgle on the forehead, and the air resounded with an explosion. A blue shockwave blasted out of the monster's head, killing the other Urgle instantly. It reached Eragon before he had time to react, and it passed through him without harm, dissipating against the houses. Eragon stood panting, then looked at his icy palm. The Gedway Ignacio was glowing like white-hot metal, yet even as he watched, it faded back to normal. He clenched his fist, then a wave of exhaustion washed over him. He felt strange and feeble, as if he had not eaten for days. His knees buckled, and he sagged against a wall.